Hey everyone, Tyler here at The Movie Beat, back with another Korean movie review. I just got back from the theaters. I was able to check out the 6th installment in the long-running Whispering Corridors horror movie series here in Korea. So it's been, I think, almost 12 years since number 5. A lot of us weren't sure whether or not they were going to continue it. I personally have only seen 2 out of this 6 total, actually 3 now. So I've seen Memento Mori and Voice. The first one was actually called Whispering Corridors, so they're not really directly related to one another, but they are very similar in style and theme. All of them take place at an all-girls high school that is haunted in some way or another. A lot of different themes of friendship, love, secrets, loss, and death. We see a lot of suicide in these films that all take center stage as the bright and pure world of these adolescent girls becomes painted red with blood as the horrors of the world begin to corrupt it. So it's a pretty cool setting, I must say, to set a horror film, and it's kind of a beloved franchise, so it's great to see it continuing here. And with school-aged girls making up a large part of the cast, this Whispering Corridors franchise has really been a launching pad for a lot of young and up-and-coming talents that have made a pretty good career for themselves. Names such as Kim Seo-hyung, Gong Hyo-ju, Song Ji-hyo, and Kim Ok-bin, just to name a few, have made kind of their starts or an early appearance in one of these Whispering Corridors films. So I guess if you would be looking at the cast, kind of seeing maybe just who might be part of this next or up-and-coming generation of talent, the actresses that you might be looking for in this one are Kim Hyun-soo, Choi Ri and BIBI are a couple of names that you might find in this. Maybe we can see more of them in the future. So I think this latest installment uses a lot of traditional scare tactics to liven up some of its densely packed narrative that features a lot of trauma, hidden secrets, haunting demons that I would say awaken to shatter the realities of the students and faculty at this all-girls high school. So I'm going to keep this story summary, synopsis, fairly spoiler-free, just a brief rundown to kind of set up the characters, the world in this one. So here we go. This is Whispering Corridors 6, The Humming. Against the advice of her older brother, Eun-hee, played by Kim Seo-hyung, takes up the job of vice principal at the all-girls high school that she herself attended many years back. With Eun-hee having completely forgot about her time as a student there, she hopes her new position will help her recall the repressed memories. But on her first day, Eun-hee begins to see and hear strange things lurking in the empty corridors and dark storage areas of the school, and her memory of her time there starts to horrifyingly return. Meanwhile, the students grow curious about an old rumor of the school's bathroom being haunted. One student, Ha-young, played by Kim Hyun-soo, who, despite having experienced her own past hardships, finds herself accused of causing a lot of trouble by the new vice principal. But when Ha-young investigates strange hymns coming from the haunted bathroom, she runs into Eun-hee, who is also drawn to the noise. The two discover that they have more in common than initially thought, both holding separate parts of the same key needed to unlock the dark and deadly mysteries surrounding the humming. So I have to say that the humming just looks and sounds amazing. I think this was beautifully photographed. It features a lot of rich colors, intricately textured environments. I think that they actually found a real abandoned high school to film at least part of this at, so that really helped create a believable environment to set up all of the scares. And this building, this school, is also big and foreboding enough for me to believe, or for it to create that sense that it has many dark and off-limits areas where sinister acts could take place or secrets could be buried, perhaps darkly singing out to be found by those curious or brave enough to navigate the dark and dank cobweb-infested corners of old. It's really these shadowy and whispering corridors that make a great metaphor for a lot of the psychological recesses that I feel like these stories take place in. Characters are often found lost within themselves, or they're having difficulty navigating these pathways. So it's a lot like the confusion about life and the hormonal storm of conflicting emotions that a lot of adolescents face during their school days, which really makes it the perfect setting for this type of story. For some reason, these students are usually there at night. Maybe a lot of Asian students, they can stay pretty late at school to study. Sometimes it's required, but it does kind of push believability when it's just one or two students at a time and the school seems like it's empty, there's no lights on. It's just a recipe for disaster, you might imagine, but that's kind of just the beauty of these stories. It's a little bit just part of the whole experience, I must say. So for the most important part of a horror movie is its ability to create those scares, the fear, the sense of terror, uneasiness as we're watching. Do these movies do that? I think they kind of are like borderline. They don't really create a lot of fear. I would say it's like 50-50. Half of it is more for fun type scares. The other half, which I think is kind of unique to this particular horror franchise, is several of the films, at least the ones that I've seen, have done a really good job at kind of balancing the horror aspect. Maybe it's more of like an Asian type horror theme, but I felt like the drama is also very strong in these movies, especially Memento Mori that I have seen. But this one, The Humming, takes a very traditional approach to its hair-raising tactics, with the mutilated girl ghost appearing in the mirror's reflection, quick hand grabs through the bookcases, slow walks through the dark, or even raising the volume to coincide with an extreme close-up of an eyeball. So pretty traditional. For me, my personal style, because I'm not scared easily, is I may be more drawn to the grotesque, something that's just so twisted and disturbing. But I would say this one, for most of its duration, does not really have all that. It's pretty tame as far as just creating that sense of fear and dread for at least the first two acts. The last act, it does raise the bar quite a bit, so it moderately succeeds in creating some chills, but the pacing of the scares is quite slow and spread very thin, I would say, through most of this film. It does actually seem to be more of a gloomy, brooding drama than like a traditional horror film in some senses. So there's very little blood being spilt until really that disturbing finale that I mentioned, and only one scene of true dismemberment, which actually happens more off-screen. So those that are looking for some of that grotesque type scares and freakouts are going to be left wanting in this one. The Humming does also seem to be taking the opportunity to address some hot issues, maybe some recent scandals that people have found themselves reading in newspapers. So it kind of tries to tie that into some subplots to make this one very relevant. But one such subplot in this one involves the use of SNS and other smart devices that the students use to spread gossip or create these entire narratives that can flourish virtually unspoken through sending just simple text messages and images that kind of creates this new form of bullying and psychological distress for students. So I thought that was a great, interesting, way to approach, 2021, the times that students are experiencing. All of that texting and sharing really takes the whole concept of note passing to new levels. I like that. So this silent and viral layer of communication really appeared to be like a main feature of this movie, especially as it started. We saw some layered screen graphics of texting the students were doing and image sharing, but it really kind of falls thin towards the end, and it evolves into more of a pretty infuriating, I would say, student-teacher relationship that I don't really want to talk too much about because I don't want to give away any spoilers, but be warned that the villains in this one are going to leave you shaking your fist in anger, which I suppose is pretty good sign that they created a great bad guy. but it does take away a lot of the enjoyment factor in this one. I don't really want a lot of social commentary in my horror films, but you know, this one kind of seems to be going in that direction. So it also wasn't too much of a surprise for the horrors to try to be balanced out with some heartfelt drama, because like Memento Mori does that really well. So I wasn't too caught off guard when this movie does try to create those feels, but I felt like it was stretching for it towards the end quite a bit. So it is there a little bit, but it does not come very naturally. The performances, I think, are strong throughout. This, you know, of course, is a pretty big cast, but my favorite performance is, of course, from the lead actress, Kim Seo-hyung, who you might have saw in The Villainous. Her character makes some pretty surprising transformations that really goes the distance as far as expressing both ends of the spectrum on like the extreme ends. And I think that's for good reasons, because she's got these moments where she can come across as very calm, mature, almost distant, just because she's got some issues going on, all the while possessing a sort of hidden strength and inner madness to do violent evil of her own. So it was a cool character to see evolve, and I was kind of surprised in several moments. But as this being one of those girls' high school horror films, I was a little bit disappointed at just the lack of development among the students in this one. So usually in the ones that I have seen, I think the movies do a pretty good job at just showcasing that bond, that friendship, or even some of the petty rivalries. And it is kind of unique being all girls, so that whole boy factor is kind of taken out. So we do kind of see just a different style of like high school film in that sense. So this one really seemed to focus more on the faculty and that vice principal role. But there is one student who does have kind of a haunting past of her own. This was the one played by Kim Hyun-soo, who we saw in The Swordsman. So in this one, she is very intense, I would say borderline aggressive in most of her scenes, so she really accounts for a lot of this film's tension. I would say much needed tension. So she was a really great addition to this film, and I like that we could see a whole new side of her acting ability, because like I said, she was pretty bubbly and nice, big smiles in The Swordsman. She's kind of scary in this one, so I like that a lot. But I think overall the best moments of Whispering Corridor 6, the humming, come during this kind of intriguing, non-stop series of revelations during the third act, where we do get probably some of the most brutal and graphic moments of the film. So when that comes, because it had been so tame up to that point, I was kind of taken aback, like, oh, okay, here we go. This is getting pretty crazy. I like it. Because also by the finale, the film thus far had kept its cards, at least its story cards, fairly hidden. So character motivations remained largely mysterious, which I liked. It kept me wanting to know more. But as these revelations were unfolding, it became more and more clear that it was eventually going to have a, I guess I would say, psychological card heavy hand. When that was going to be played, this movie kind of became one of those, like, I'm gonna rewrite everything that you knew because there's psychological things going on. And while that can be kind of a clever trick and, fun twist that I could say, to me, it more often feels convenient to the writing. So I personally don't really like that style. But that being said, I do think that this film ends with a very strong sense of self. But I think in the end, it's going to probably prove to be a little bit too convoluted for its own good. I think some of the twists are going to leave a lot of people scratching their heads as they're leaving this movie, rather than coming out with a smile of having survived the horrors or experienced all of those thrills. I think that they just did one too many things to try and be like clever, on top of trying to be socially relevant and making that dramatic point of like, whoa, this is an issue we all need to kind of be taking seriously. It doesn't really leave you with the best feeling of like, oh, I want to revisit that. That was awesome. But it does kind of feel like it wants you to revisit to see if they really wrote this well, or is it one of those like gotcha type movies. I don't know if I'm going to be taking another trip on it, but I think it was a pretty good looking movie, and I was in it for most of it, so I gotta say it's just slightly above average for me. I'm gonna rate this one a 5.5 out of 10. Let me know what you guys think of this one when you do see it. I'm sure there's a lot of people excited. The Whispering Corridors series is continuing. It's alive. What is your favorite in this series? Like I said, I've only seen Memento Mori, Voice, and this one, The Humming. So can you guys recommend another one for me to see? Or, you know, is this not your cup of tea? I can totally understand that as well. So just really happy to be sharing with you guys my thoughts. I feel like I have this great opportunity living here in Korea, being a Korean film fan, and being able to see it and relay, you know, some early reaction for you. So as always, if you like this content, please like and subscribe. Until next time, I'm Tyler here at The Movie Beat. Keep watching movies.